thing has to be for everybody.
Right.
We can have platforms that have stuff on them that not everyone on that platform or who consumes stuff on that platform enjoys. And The View is a particularly weird place to do a cancellation.
It's called The View?
It's called The View. It's not called The Facts.
Yeah, but isn't it interesting that it's called, I mean, I don't think they meant this when Barbara Walters invented it a long time ago, but it's The View.
Well,
that's the problem in America. There is one view.
Right, and
one
that's clearly actually
true opinion, and everybody else can go sit in the...
They're disgusting. She's Anna Navarro in your wildest imagination. You could never solo host a show. You will only ever make it as part of an ensemble, and you could never hope to achieve the success that Tucker Carlson has. So you can sit in your little cheap seats all day long and enjoy your little negative henpecking, but your careers are going nowhere, and Tucker is about to dominate in whatever space he goes to.
It's called The View, a show designed for conversation, but ironically, it rarely feels like a space for different perspectives. The name suggests a spectrum of opinions, but too often it has morphed into a stage for one dominant narrative. That irony wasn't lost when Barbara Walters created the show, but over time, what was once an exchange of ideas has hardened into a single lane of thought. If you fit that lane, you're welcome. If you don't, you're painted as the problem. That exact tension unfolded one morning when Sunny Hostin, polished and ready as always, slid into her seat prepared to deliver her signature blend of moral authority and fiery critique. She was poised, confident, and perhaps overly comfortable in an environment that usually echoes her tone. What no one expected was how different this particular broadcast would be. Sitting across from her were two guests who weren't interested in playing along. They didn't come to nod, smile, and shuffle into the chorus. They came to challenge. Bill Maher and Megyn Kelly are not strangers to controversy. Each has made a career out of testing boundaries, refusing to bend to groupthink, and dissecting arguments with sharp precision. And on this morning, they brought that energy into Sunny's domain. What followed wasn't a conversation. It was a clash that would pull apart the carefully constructed atmosphere of The View and expose its cracks in real time. The conversation drifted to the familiar theme of karma. Maher, with his trademark sarcasm, dismissed the very concept. He pointed out that life isn't some balanced ledger where every wrong invites a cosmic correction. There's no such thing as karma, he declared. Life is random.
About what we go over, because I got so many texts this week because she attacked me the week before.
Sure.
So she was, everybody was like, oh, Bill, I get you're enjoying the karma. First of all, I'm going to talk about this at the end of my show next week, teaser. But there is no fucking thing as karma, okay? Get over that. Whoopi attacks me on a regular basis. She says stupid shit on a regular basis. They just happen to coincide.
The line landed with his audience, but more importantly, it cut against the show's usual tone of assigning moral weight to every event. Sunny, who often leans on that framework, suddenly found herself facing a brick wall. From there, the ground began to shift. The hosts attempted to push the conversation into territory they controlled, but Maher and Kelly wouldn't let them. The supposed fact checks that The View has leaned on in past episodes suddenly backfired. Corrections had to be issued in fact, and these weren't minor clarifications. They were substantial whoppbacks, the kind that shred credibility. Watching the polished authority unravel in front of a live audience was jarring.
Hot mess that they air in the mornings, called The View, had to issue not one, not two, not three, but 4 corrections, legal corrections, 4 legal notes. We only have 3 of them on camera, but look at this. Let's imagine what they did at that debate, where once again, they tried to fact check only one side, and then when their fact checks got fact checked, they cowered. They cowered in fear. I mean, this is a pattern with them.
The tension sharpened when the table turned toward global politics. Alyssa Farah, serving as the Republican voice on the panel, raised a point about America's role on the world stage. She warned that if the United States lost its place as the leading power, it wouldn't be replaced by a benign, small democracy. It would be China, an authoritarian regime currently operating concentration camps for Uyghur Muslims, a government marked by deep racism and human rights abuses. Her point was clear. The stakes of American strength were higher than partisan squabbles.
Yeah, I'm going to tee it up. It starts with Alyssa Farah, who's supposed to be the Republican commentator, and then you'll hear Sunny jump in.
If America is not the #1 global power, it's not going to be Denmark. It's going to be communist China, a country that right now the government is imprisoning Uyghur Muslims in concentration camps. It is a deeply racist government. It's a human rights violating government. It is a government that if they are the leader of the free world, we are not a free world the way that we are right now.
Sunny pounced. She reframed the conversation into one about patriotism and symbolism, accusing conservatives of hijacking the flag and the concept of loyalty to country. She pulled in the words of FBI Director Christopher Wray, who had identified white supremacy as the greatest domestic threat. It was her attempt to shift the focus away from authoritarian China and back to America's internal divisions.
I had a discussion on The View about world superpowers from the sound of it. That's how they got into it. And Sunny Hostin made some comments about patriotism and America and Black America. It's all in there, Jason. I mean, it's all in there.
The notion of patriotism and the notion of America and the American flag has been co-opted by the right as if they are true patriots. Mm-hmm. But when I listened to Christopher Wray, the head of the FBI, he said white supremacy is the biggest domestic threat to this country.
This is where it really hit.
But the tactic backfired. Kelly, steady and deliberate, reminded the panel that the conversation wasn't about who waves the flag louder, but about the very real global consequences of America's decline. Maher, in his dry tone, cut through the theatrics with precision. The effect was devastating, not because they shouted her down, but because they calmly dismantled her points with facts and logic. This was the pattern all morning. Sunny raised her voice, leaned on emotional pleas, and tried to stretch her monologues into dominance. Yet every time, Maher and Kelly punctured the balloon. Her arguments, usually met with nods and affirmation, now met cold resistance. Each rebuttal exposed the fragility of her rhetoric, and slowly the authority she carried began slipping through her fingers.
Term you want. Okay. Because maybe that is a word that's triggering, and so let's not use that word. I don't want to call it the super far left, but don't tell me the left
has the super far right. He's talking about the left. Well, then
okay, but we talked about that. I mean, I think we agree about the danger of the super far right, and I can't say it enough. I think they're the bigger threat. But don't tell me that the left hasn't changed. Mm-hmm. I mean, I'm old enough to remember when it was the conservatives who hated the Jews.
Yeah.
Okay.
The breaking point came when the subject of January 6th entered the conversation. Sunny escalated quickly, equating the riot at the Capitol with some of the darkest moments in human history. She placed it alongside slavery, the Holocaust, and World War II atrocities. The claim landed with a thud. Even in a room accustomed to dramatic declarations, this one crossed a line. Silence followed, not in agreement, but in disbelief.
Donald Trump will be sworn in as the 47th president of the United States, yay, on January 20th of this month. Not everyone's happy about it, and many people would like us to be more focused on the insurrection that he personally unleashed. If you ask them, as we discussed earlier, they think it's as bad as like the Holocaust, and you don't have to take my word for it. Here is Sunny Hostin of
January 6th was an atrocity. It was one of the worst moments in American history. And when you think about the worst moments in American history, like World War II, things that happened, like the Holocaust, chattel slavery.
Yeah, the January 6th is right up there next to the Holocaust.
Bill Maher didn't need to roar. He simply dissected the absurdity of such a comparison. Megyn Kelly followed with sharp questions that Sunny couldn't answer. What began as moral grandstanding turned into a collapse of credibility. It felt less like a debate and more like a professor gently but firmly correcting a student who hadn't done the homework. And yet, Sunny doubled down. Her fallback was to steer the conversation back to identity politics, a space where she's usually untouchable. She invoked historical pain, personal offense, and buzzwords designed to reset the power dynamic. But Kelly refused to bite. Instead, she calmly asked for clarity and facts, exposing the emotional pivot for what it was, a diversion from the actual discussion. The result was devastating for Sunny. What had once been her stage now belonged to her challengers. Her body language betrayed the shift, eyes darting, voice rising, composure slipping. She reached for her notes more often, but the cards couldn't save her.
Bill Maher, who has been the standard bearer for liberalism and in many ways leftism until the woke went bananas in this last decade, but for decades, that's what this guy has represented in America. I want you to note the tone they all talk with him. I want you to look at Sunny Hostin's body language and the way they look at him and everything else. Just because he is a lefty who hasn't gone completely bananas, here they are talking.
Maher smirked as he lobbed sarcastic but pointed observations. Kelly remained unshaken, her calm delivery contrasting sharply with Sunny's rising frustration. Then came the word that has dominated so many cultural debates, woke. Sunny attempted to reclaim it, arguing it originated in the Black community as a call to awareness of injustice. She framed its co-option by conservatives as a weaponization. Bill Maher didn't dismiss the history. He agreed the word once carried a noble meaning, but he pointed out, language evolves. What once meant vigilance now represents excess, censorship, and overreach.
Well, I had a different question, but it struck me that in the first segment you used the term woke, and you said that woke is what was sort of ruining everything. And I know that you're
No, I didn't say ruining everything. I said that's why Trump could get reelected.
That's why Trump could get reelected. Yeah. So the term woke has been, in my view, co-opted by the right and weaponized and bastardized. And so I was surprised to hear you use the term, because historically, as you know, because I think you're quite brilliant, that woke is a word used by the Black community to note that we must be aware of social injustices.
But words
and
migrate.
So why is that a bad thing?
It's not a bad thing, and originally that was absolutely a great thing. Alert to injustice. Who's not for that?
That shift wasn't a right-wing conspiracy. It was cultural reality. Sunny tried to counter with offense. She accused critics of misusing the term, then pivoted into a defensive posture when confronted with her own controversial past remarks, including calling white Republican women cockroaches. She tried to soften it by saying she compared behavior, not people. The audience wasn't convinced, and neither were her challengers. At that moment, the control Sunny usually wielded slipped completely. With voices overlapping and tension peaking, the producers had no choice but to cut to break. It was an unscripted admission that the discussion had gone off rails, and Sunny was at the center of the derailment.
Talk about you that. Called white Republican women cockroach.
Actually, I didn't. And
you said sort of acting like cockroaches.
I used it a similar. Let me answer
metaphor.
that. Okay. I used a metaphor.
Here's what I'm going to ask you all to do. Here's what I'm going to ask you to do.
Wow. Yeah.
I'm going to ask you to tone it down a bit, because I can't hear anything. No one can hear what's being said.
She said I can call white women roaches. All right, we're going to go to break.
We're going to break.
What made this broadcast different wasn't just the pushback. It was the way it exposed how brittle the show's framework had become. A platform branded as a space for diverse voices cracked under the weight of real diversity of thought. Without the protective echo chamber, Sunny Hostin's arguments didn't just weaken. They collapsed. Bill Maher's dry wit and Megyn Kelly's surgical composure formed a 1-2 punch. They didn't scream. They didn't rant. They simply held the line, refused to be bulldozed, and demanded clarity. Against that, Sunny's arsenal of passion, identity, and moral high ground looked outdated, even hollow. By the end of the broadcast, the balance had shifted. The authority that Sunny carried into the studio had evaporated. The more she fought to reclaim it, the more it slipped away. For viewers, it wasn't just another heated morning segment. It was a turning point, a rare glimpse of what happens when The View actually lives up to its name and allows genuine, unfiltered challenge onto its stage. Sunny walked in ready to command, but she walked out exposed. For once, the audience didn't see a commanding prosecutor delivering verdicts. They saw a performer caught off script, unprepared for resistance. And that image may linger longer than any monologue she's delivered.